My name is Dr. Eric Toring. I'm the Senior Vice President for the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. The webinar today is sponsored by the ACVPM and is available to our partner organizations, active members of the American Association of Food Safety and Public Health Veterinarians, the U.S. Animal Health Association, and the National Association of Federal Veterinarians. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the ACVPM Continuing Education Committee, Dr. David Fletcher.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for attending our last webinar of 2022. Now I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Randall Spare, and he'll be speaking on preventative health management and cow-calf operations using expected progeny differences, EPDs. Dr. Spare is a graduate of Kansas State University School of Veterinary Medicine and has over 36 years of experience as a mixed animal practitioner. He's currently an owner of Ashland Veterinary Center in Ashland, Kansas, and has extensive experience in large animal medicine, herd health, and reproductive services to include synchronization, artificial insemination, genomic testing. Dr. Spare and his team and his vet team manage the herd health for some of the largest registered Angus seed stock producers in the United States. Dr. Spare and his wife, Michelle, have 5 grown children and 14 grandchildren. We welcome you, Dr. Spare. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to share. I was trying to get a feel for the audience that I'll be speaking at. And what I just wanted to communicate to you, I love what I do. I love the people that I work for. And as one of the challenges that we have as veterinarians that have been here for a while, we're not only working for the people that we started working for in 1990 when we moved to Ashland were grandfathers. Now we work for their fathers and then the third generation. And that's what drives me. It's the people that in our practice, in our practice area, we do work. And so those of you that don't know Kansas very well, we're about 15 miles from Oklahoma. We're about 3 hours west of Wichita. And in our county, there's more cows than there are people. And probably one thing that made draw attention to our county in March the 6th, 2017 is we had a fire that burned 75% of our county in nearly one day. We lost a number of cattle, but I say those things that just to give you context of where we are. And as we go through this talk, one of the benchmarks, the premises of what I think about every day and what keeps me awake is really, you mentioned a couple upcoming webinars, is one on sustainability of our profession. And we as veterinarians have to be engaged in that. And everyone I talk to that's a veterinarian that maybe doesn't do what I do, I ask them, make sure you talk to people that are in academia. Make sure you help them understand that we need more people that do what I do today. To understands that our goal is to help our clients be successful and be profitable. And in doing that, that brings us to my conversation, the beginning of my talk. And we have to begin every day with the end in mind. And my goal, and when I talk to producers, is to make every day a good day in the life of every calf. And one of the things we have to understand is we have such a diverse population of producers in the United States. And there's 750,000 calf producers in our country. And you can see that they're from various backgrounds and various ecosystems. And we're not like the pigs and the chickens. We can confine them and make everything equal. We have there on the left those all black cows with a Hereford walking away from us. They're from South Louisiana. The one in the middle is from West Texas. The one on the right-hand side is a ranch that borders Mexico and Arizona. Then we have in the middle with the black cows, those cattle are from central Missouri. And every one of those have a person connected to them. And that's what I want to communicate. I have to match science, match economies of scale with people. And I tell young veterinarians or veterinary students to come spend time with us, we have to be really good at what we do from an academic standpoint. We have to understand science, but we have to understand the challenges of each one of those people and each one of their backgrounds. The Mennonite family, they raise vegetables in central Illinois, but they also have a seed stock production. The guy on the right has an MBA. My friend, Dr. John Mazik on the left. So every bull, every animal is connected with a person. So we have to understand of those cow-calf operations today, when we do a census here in a few days, there's going to be close to 29 million cows instead of 32 million, which was several years ago because of the widespread drought. And look at the population. The average operation only has 38 cows. So many people have cows for different reasons, but we have to keep them healthy. And we have to listen and understand and ask questions and help these people understand how to do that. And I'm going to show you today some of the most exciting things that we do. And many of you may be aware of programs like VAC 34, VAC 45, and we have vaccines ad nauseum to use to prevent sickness. But some of the least costly methods is just thinking and using some EPDs, okay? The common denominator is grass. Cows are the only ones that can use cellulose throughout our country, throughout all over the world. And so they're in places where there's forage production, and that's the context of which we operate. So we think about cattle that are in the feed yards there. You see a picture of cattle in a growing, and we still have tremendous, this was 1996 data, but it's still the same today. We have not changed the outcome of health in feed yards today. We still have the same challenges. Many of these cattle that are slaughtered have lung lesions that at some time in their life have been sick. I like that. Last one is that 78% of the treated cattle and 68% of the untreated cattle. So there's cattle that have never been diagnosed with illness that have had some time had a respiratory incidence in their life. My point is that we have to really work hard. Going back to my first phrase is we need to make every day a good day in the life of that calf and not put them in a position to fail. The very last summary there of that Texas Ranch to Rail program was probably one of the best pieces of work that's been done. And I'd like somebody to redo that with today's finances. We learned that during that time period of 92 to 97, in those dollars, that if you treated one calf one time, it increased the cost of production by nearly $100 a head. So we have to understand that illness not only costs in labor, costs in loss of feed efficiency, decreased carcass merit, death loss. We spend a lot of money every year on these cattle because they're getting sick. And many don't get sick, but there's just a lot of illness. So I tell people when we're talking to cow-calf producers, there's 4 areas that we add value to while we own those animals. So let's say the less than 500 pounds during conception, during the gestation, during when they calve out, and when they're grown up to 550 pounds. We add value using these 4 tools. Through genetics, the genetic choices that we make, through nutrition. And many times as veterinarians, we're involved with the health program, obviously. And sometimes we get tunnel focused and think that's the area that we have to concentrate on. Yes, we do that. We talk about vaccination and the timing of the vaccination, which tool to use, and which diseases to try to keep out of our herd, which to concentrate on. And that last one is temperament. We can see that temperament increases morbidity and more when animals are wilder, they're handled improperly, and we increase the morbidity and mortality. So those are 4 cornerstones that I find myself talking about all the time when I'm talking with a producer. And today we'll talk about that genetics component. So just as we think about what we do as veterinarians, and you can see that we live in a part of Kansas where there's not very many trees. And we do a number of things for our clients: nutritional management and reproductive management. Keep on flipping through those. Our genetic choices. Our goal has to be that our clients are economically successful using the resources that they have and the equity that they have. And each one of these ranches operations come from a different vantage points there. And it takes us listening and hearing what they want to do with their willingness to risk their resources. And cattle production it's not for the faint of heart. These are some things that we do that are non-traditional. We talk about EPDs and understanding genomics. We're involved with synchronization programs and heifer selection. We talk about the temperament and the herd health program. You know, if I was thinking about graduating from veterinary school in 1986, those probably wouldn't be at the top of my list of things we talk about. Yeah, we talked about our herd health programs, and I thought that's where it stopped and started. But today, I understand it's broader than that, and it gives a great amount of satisfaction to see our people be successful. So, how did we get started? How did we get to understanding these EPDs? And so, part of it is one of my good friends and clients is a seed stock producer, and through him, I learned tremendous amount when I moved to Ashland, Kansas. And then I have one of my favorite ranches. One of the first ranches that I did to work for when I came here they had 850 head of commercial cows, and they were all Hereford. And each year he would breed on enough heifers that he would calve out 130 head of heifers every year. Now notice there that he calved those out in a dry lot. That means they were in confinement. They probably were in a pen of several acres, and they would feed those cattle every day. And notice they did that for 60 days. So if you have 130 head of heifers that are calving out in a small pen, cleanliness becomes a challenge. And it took 3 full-time employees, and they would check those heifers every 24 hours. And in that particular group, they did, we had over 40% dystocias, some that they pulled calves, and I know we did at least 10 cesareans for them that year. So if they were 50 miles away on a dirt road, it would take them an hour and a half to drive here, an hour and a half home, and an hour to do a C-section. So that very costly labor. So you can picture me standing there doing a C-section. You got a captive audience. You can't run away. And I said, what bulls are we using for this? Oh, I'm using the same bulls I used last year. They're really proven low birth weight black bulls. I said, okay. How's this working out for you? Oh, and he knew my friend had registered Angus, and he knew where I was going with this. And he said, I can't afford those bulls. I said, well, what's this costing us? I never did ask him the death loss that he had totally, but I know it was significant. And I said, I think I can help. So that's I want to frame what I want to talk about today in the context of that. And from 1995 to 2022, this is what we've learned. So again, there's 4 areas. Today we'll talk about genetics. Okay, the next one. So what is an EPD? So just like each one of us get in our vehicles, and we know that how it's going to operate. I'm not a gearhead, and I don't care. I just want to drive a red pickup with 4 doors, and I want it to get me there where I'm going. But many of you might understand how many horsepower, how the gear end or the rear end's geared, and so on and so forth. Today we can know with EPDs in all breeds what these predictions really can be. We know that I can get in my red truck and I can do 80 going down the highway. And I do that now and then out here because there's not very many cops and they leave us alone and the roads are straight. But I know that I can do that. I know that today we can produce cattle and have predictable results day in and day out. It doesn't have to change. These EPDs have been available for 30 years. And in the last 10 or 12 years, we've been able to enhance these EPDs by using genomic testing. And that's where we basically use blood to identify these genomic predictions at an even younger age. And we can give percentile rankings of where these calves fall at an early age and understand what their values are going to be. And American Angus and other associations have even used dollar value indexes. Okay, we'll go through that in a minute. So here's an example. And so calving ease direct, that's what we use to determine whether a bull is going to produce an offspring that will be low birth weight. We want that number in heifers to be high. So in other words, the bull number 2 has a 13 CED, bull number 5 has or bull number 1 has a 5 CED. And we'll give you a definition of that in a minute. But the other things you can find by that we see a percentile ranking with the Angus breed. And we can see that each one of these parameters, birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, each one of these are very predictable. The SC stands for scrotum. The one on the far right on the upper right-hand corner is docility, and that's temperament. It's interesting, and we'll see it later, that temperament is 0.36% heritable. That's a highly heritable trait. Here, these 3 circles indicate the carcass merit of these animals. And so today, we not only know how their birth weight is, how they're going to grow, we're going to know how tall they are, what kind of milk production the dams out of these are going to be, but we know the carcass values. And then you can see the last figures there where the American Angus Association has put into the indexes to be able to pull all these merits, these carcass merits and growth merits together to help producers understand, to be able to sort those bulls according to what they need. So there's so much information that we have today, just like our vehicles or any other widget we were going to buy. We know that these animals are going to give us very predictable results. So just a few of these are traits that in their heritability, and it takes if there's a geneticist on there, they'd probably be able to explain some of these better than I. But we understand these are highly heritable traits, and that we use them to give us predictable results. For instance, a very low heritable trait is reproduction. Another way to say that is it's about 0.1% heritable. That means it's 0.9% the environment that's going to predict reproductive rates versus some of these other traits that we see in these cattle. So we can use we can count on these results. Okay. So here's the definition of calving ease direct. This is the point of where we're at with this cow herd that we're talking about. So this definition is from the American Angus Association. They use is it's expressed as a difference in percentage of unassisted births with a higher value indicating greater calving ease in first calf heifers. CED predicts the average difference in calving ease in which the sire's calves will be born when bred to first calf heifers. So in other words, in our example, those 2 bulls that we showed you, bull number 1 had a calving ease direct of 8. Bull number 2 had a calving ease of 13. There was a 5% difference there. So that tells us that bull number 2 with the higher calving ease direct had 5 fewer assisted births. So let's put that on 100. So if we have 100 head of calves or heifers that are going to be calving, and let's say we have with the CED bull of 13, we have 2 two assisted births, we might have 5% more. So 93% unassisted births using the bull number one. So there's a huge difference. And what our producers have learned is they can find thresholds that work for them within their calving, within their herd. For instance, we know that let's say you're going to breed these two Herefords. Herefords tend to have a higher maternal calving ease. In other words, even with using low birth weight Hereford bulls, those females will have bigger calves. We all have to remember that half of our birth weight comes from the male and half of it comes from the female from a genetic transmission standpoint. So with increased calving difficulty, we have a myriad of challenges. So notice the definition, notice my slide says is decrease of an anticipation of dystocia. So years ago, even before I started practice, the common thing was to eliminate calving ease was to use longhorn bulls to breed your heifers to. What would you have when you had a longhorn bull breeding heifers? That first calf crop was basically a disposable offspring. They weren't very useful. They didn't grow as well. And I'm not discounting the longhorn breed. I'm just stating facts here. So today we can use calving ease bulls that have top 10% growth to show you to give us the results we want. So think about the herd I told you about. They were calving in confinement. So these heifers, you notice this baby calf is following this heifer. And just fun facts, there's ragweed. That green weed is a ragweed. So that's probably August or September. She's calving in the fall. She's out by herself. There's plenty of forage there. So they're calving outside in a pasture setting, and they get checked once a day. They go out to discover them. In fact, the term I've coined is they use the Columbus method of calving. That's when you go out and discover them every day instead of having to check them every 2 hours. So there's decreased labor. There's decreased environmental bacteria and virus to be exposed to. We have decreased dystocias. Obviously, our colostral intake is going to be better. Calf vigor is going to be better with lack of dystocias. A myriad of challenges come when calves have difficult birth weight and there's increased acidosis. And I actually think one of the things that we really have to consider this is an animal welfare issue. When we use a bull that we don't know anything about, and we made them to young first calf heifers, and we hope they're going to do okay, I think that's a very, very poor choice. And in my older age, I'm probably a little more willing to say, well, to some people, I think you could do better here. It's hard on the cattle, it's hard on you, it's hard on your family to make these kind of choices. So all of those are tremendous cost savings to a rancher or producer. So we think about colostrum and what it provides. So we think about colostrum. And when I was in veterinary school, we didn't understand all these things. We talked about how the IgG needs to be absorbed within 4 hours. Starting at 4 hours, 6 hours, and the intestinal tract starts to close down. And by 24 hours, it's virtually not going to be absorbing anything else. And I was under the impression that's all that colostrum gave us. But now we understand there's many vitamins, vitamin A in particular, that's transmitted in the colostrum. We're starting to understand even more so that the gut microbiome is developed using those the colostral cells that go into the animal. And even though the colostrum may not be absorbed after 24 hours, the colostrum that's continuing to be inside the udder continues to bathe the intestinal tract and prevent there's white blood cells in that, and it prevents some infection. And that's where we see that the effect of those colostral cells. Now, I've extrapolated a little bit of data here that shows you that we know that when there's failure passive transfer of colostrum, in the first 2 lactations, there can be, in a dairy cow, 1,000 pounds less milk. Now, that's huge. That's real dollars. And we have to understand that. And we can make those differences by what we choose. So one of the articles that I read recently, Sandra Godden is the president of the American Association of Bovine Practitioners this year, but she had an article in Vet Clinics of North America. It says colostral management is the single most important management factor in determining calf health and survival. Now, she comes from a dairy background, but I contend that we cow-calf producers, we need to buy into that. We hope that cow stands still and her calf gets up and nurse. There needs to be more studies in the beef world today and looking at what that serum protein is at 24 to 48 hours and what are the major influences of that. There's more that we need to learn, but we can hang our hat on this pieces of information. And there's some other studies that I'll give you here a little bit later. So I put this slide up here. It's one of my favorite slides that I use every day. I don't talk about this particular slide, but this is stamped in my brain. Chris Chase, one of my favorite immunologists, because he's relevant, he understands, he helps us as veterinarians to be able to relate to our producers. Now notice through here, when is the immunity at the very weakest? It's at birth. And just like in the dog and cat world, particularly dogs with parvo, that immunity starts to come up with time, but there's maternal immunity that's given. But look what the colostrum does from passive transfer immunity. It gives us strength, gives us robustness until we can get of age where that calf starts to build some immunity. There's many other portions that we can learn from that slide. But as I craft a vaccination program, and for different producers, I have this particular slide stamped in my brain, and it's kind of a guiding light for me. But I think that just like there's people in your world that you hang your hat on their work, we need more Chris Chases of this to help us understand the immunology of calves. So when we look at colostral immunity, I tell people it's liquid gold. When I pull a calf, when we do a cesarean, a calf is cold, anytime we need to, we encourage to supplement that calf with some colostrum. We will have at the clinic some powdered colostrum to use that. So here's some work that was done, and I haven't ever seen this type of work repeated, but Perino and Whittam did at Clay Center, Nebraska, and in the 90s, 23% of the calves failed to receive adequate colostrum. Of those calves that did that, they were 3 times more likely to get sick, 5 times more likely to die within the first 28 days of life. And then when they were on feed, they gained less weight. I would like to see that more studies done in that area. I wonder what influence it has on reproduction in females. We don't know that for sure, but I would imagine there is. So these are what another pieces of information that when somebody comes to me with a sick calf, I find myself asking, was this off of a first calf heifer? Did it receive colostrum? Well, I think so. Did you check its udder? Does it have mastitis? So those are things that these don't cost money. We just have to know whether this calf's producing colostrum or a cow's producing colostrum. So colostral intake and the efficiency of colostrum is guided by timing. We sure need it in there, but 6 hours, we'd like to see it in there. The dairy industry, in these large dairies, they force feed a gallon of colostrum in those calves within the first hour. We know that colostral immunity is influenced by body condition score at calving. We know that first calf heifers have less quantity and quality. One of my biggest challenges right now is we have a number of Wagyu producers. And those Wagyus, they do a lot of nice things, but they don't produce very much milk. And knowing that, on particularly first calf heifers, several of these producers, we say we need to supplement colostral intake at birth. Now, one of the little pieces of information that I've learned recently in these dairies, they make sure that their equipment is very, very clean. The higher the level of bacterial count when they give colostrum, if there's any bacterial uptake before colostrum gets in there, then that has more of a chance to take hold. So you take this cow and calf that's walking away from us, the chances of being clean in a clean environment, because we're confident that she can go out and calve on her own, that's huge. That cleanliness is so important. The biggest challenge that we have in some of our herds anymore is when they still calve in confinement, we have challenges with rotavirus, particularly rotavirus at 8 to 10 days of age. So cleanliness is just a huge part of preventive health. I grew up on a dairy farm, and my dad sold the dairy when I was 6. But one thing I can remember him stamping into my brain was cleanliness. Some more things there. When there's acidosis, just because of increased calving difficulty, something we talk with producers about. Yeah, that cow has a big teat, or did it have mastitis last year? So a lesson that was stamped home to me is I had a cow that was had mastitis one year, and she got pregnant again. And I think, oh, that udder looks pretty good. Well, she calved out by herself, and come to find out her mastitis was in all 4 quarters. And that calf probably didn't receive colostrum. I kept it alive. I gave it colostrum probably close to 24 hours of age. And this was a good personal experience. That calf died about 2 months of age after we treated 3 or 4 times. So that idea that cellular passive transfer, and that was a mature cow, but that calf didn't get colostrum. Temperament makes a big deal. And we can influence that by 2 ways: genetics and our environment. And animal handling and animal welfare is so critical. And we talk about that today all the time. So I want to go back to that ranch that we talked about. So in 2021, there was a time period from February 1 to February 14 where the temperature, and many of you remember, didn't get above 0 for about 14 days. And this particular ranch had 120 head of heifers calving. In their AI cycle, they had 50 of those cows that were calving during that particular cold spell. They calved those outside in an open range. So think about feed cost was savings. It was clean. They did that with the manager and his 2 teenagers. And during that time period, they lost 2 calves. But how did we do that? We used proven AI sire, top 5% calving, top 15% growth. Now, remember me talking about longhorns. Yeah, they may have been top 5% calving, but they would have been bottom 5% for growth. And here at the same time, this ranch used sires that were in top 10% for in-product merit, or the carcass qualities, the growth, once we weaned those calves. And look what happens to this ranch. They've created demand, and we always have to relate to dollars. I think it's important that in my job, I can prescribe a treatment, but if it may make sense and we may save lives, that producer still has to make money. His demand for his cattle is he gets $5 above the Kansas weighted average. His heifers bring steer price. In other words, if steers are selling for $1.80 a pound, heifers normally are $15 to $20 back, so $1.60 a pound. because he's using proven sires with known quantity growth and end product merit, there's other people that want to buy those heifers at steer price. So we've done that with genetic choices. I thought I removed these slides, but I just want to share with you a way that we've helped one client out of Nebraska be successful. He was buying bulls at a sale, and I was buying his heifers in his open, and we would breed those heifers and sell them. And we would genomically test those heifers. And I told this gentleman he would buy the lowest bulls that he could buy at this sale. They were still good heifers, but they weren't very good, as good as we want them to be. So we genomically tested those heifers, and they were less than average of all the heifers that we were testing. But at the end of the day, this is what he's producing today. Flip through those. There's a few things that will come up. And I relate it to value. We talk about the value that we added. So he just sold a set of steers to National Beef. And those steers, you can see the first circle that came up, they were sold on $1.55 market. In other words, that was the base price that those cattle were bringing. But they brought him back up in the upper right-hand corner is $226 a head above market price, or in other ways to say it, they brought $1.70. You can see down there at the bottom lower right-hand corner, his cattle, because of the genetic choices that he made, because of the influence of temperament, his nutrition, and his health choices, those 58 head of steers brought $10,000 above market price. In other words, that's like having another 10 head of cows out in the pasture that didn't cost him anything. So we can make differences in genetic choices with calving ease, with growth, with milk production, with height, with mature height, and also with the carcass merit that can help our producers remain sustainable. And our challenge is, in our field as veterinarians, we need more young veterinarians to be sustainable. There's not enough veterinarians in our neck of the woods. There needs to be more of us, and we need to understand these things. So this kind of closes out, just gives a synopsis of what we do. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to share with you. I'm passionate about genetics. I tell people I talk more about EPDs today than which IBR vaccine to use. And one of the things that I look for when we hire young veterinarians or office help is we want young people that are willing to care about others, and that they're willing to trust, build trust, and have compassion. They have personal integrity, and that integrity says, I don't know, but I want to learn. We want curious individuals. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share today, and I appreciate it very much. I'm humbled that I can do this.
Great, Dr. Spare. I definitely appreciate the engaging presentation. So with that, we will go ahead and answer, or hopefully ask Dr. Spare a couple of questions, and I'm sure he can answer those. First question, and I'm going to back up a few slides, involves the immunology graph. Individual asked that an explanation of the arrow on the bottom of the immunology graph. I believe it's the arrow just above the fully responsive.
Is that right in here? Yeah. So I think that probably in my ignorance, I don't understand all of it, because Chris Chase is a lot smarter than I am. But we have to look at time. That probably has to do with time. If you look at conception, and at conception, there's a virtually no immunity whatsoever. And to put the context of that in place, let's talk about, just help you understand that the immune system is really non-functional in a bovine up to 120 days. And we know that because of BVD. So for instance, if this is a fetus and it's inside of a cow and it's exposed to BVD virus that crosses the placental barrier, and it recognizes that BVD virus as being a normal part of its immune system if it's exposed to from 0 to 120 days. So with time, that has to do with the timing of the immunity. And that's why we get BVD carriers. That calf is exposed to BVD, recognizes that as being normal virus, and never develops an immune response to that. So I would say the arrow has to do with time as you go through across there.
Excellent. Second question is, could you provide any explanation to the genomic testing process? How many animals are tested, and how you might work with the producers to explain the results?
So great. I saw that my classmate, Dr. Tom Berg, asked that. Tom was president of my class, and he was the smartest one of the older ones. I was a young guy compared to him. So that's a great question. So what we do there, you take any sort of protein. Most commonly, it's either blood or now there's a sampling method. You can just take an ear notch or a piece of skin, and that is sent in to there's only about 3 labs in the country. The one that we use is Neogen out of Lincoln, Nebraska. But more importantly, when that is sent in, we send it to a company out of St. Joe, Missouri. Really, it's right by the American Angus Association. And they're the ones that compile that data. They basically send that stuff into the lab, and it comes back in to them. And just the best way to explain it is just a bunch of letters, and it's a sequencing. But they have evaluation tools that will go through there and measure those sequences and give us those predictions. And so then how do I use that? So we can actually, there's many people that use it various ways. So one of my hobbies is to buy heifers, breed them, and sell them. So we'll actually genomically test those and identify those that have the highest merit, just like the American Angus Association had an index of which ones are going to create the most value. So we can do that with commercial cattle too. And that's the cool thing, is then we can start to compare apples to apples. And so we can sell a group of heifers that rank in the top 15% for calving ease, yearling weight, in carcass merit, and bred to one of the best bulls of the Angus breed. We can give that client a very predictable response. We also use that in some of these cow herds that we'll go through there and test them, and they'll take the bottom 15 or 20% and just cull those off. So understand that when we have these herds in a typical cow-calf operation, that you saw that herd with 850 cows. Well, they only needed 130 head of replacement heifers a year. Well, today we'll have that same cow herd that has 850 cows, and they'll keep every heifer, and they'll breed on them for a very short period of time or maybe a longer time. It just depends on what their equity is, what their resources are. But then they can either keep the ones that are bred early, or they can sell the best cattle. They can sell the ones that doesn't fit their program. So I would encourage you sometime, just out of curiosity, think about this. It's a way to describe those cattle and how they're economically relevant. So every now and then I listen to a Superior Livestock Sales, and I listen to the auctioneer and his description. And he uses words like, look at those cattle. They come from a reputation herd. They've got big bone under them. Look at how big and deep and wide they are. Well, those are words that have no economic relevance at all. And I'm certainly understanding that many of those people have no understanding of what makes people money. So what we're able to do with that genomic information is to quantify that group of cattle, versus saying, yeah, these are out of so-and-so's genetics. No, how good a genetics are they out of? So it's a quantifiable result that we're able to use those to encourage people to say, this is what I have. This is the quality of cattle that I have. And so understand, if they test their heifers, even though they don't test their steer calves that will get sold to either a feeding period, a program, or they retain ownership and feed them out, by testing their heifers, you understand what the male calves are. So that's one way that's useful, very, very beneficial. And actually, I noticed the next question on there is, well, how are these smaller cow-calf operations doing with the advent of monopolies in the beef industry? So actually, the answer to that is there's actually more opportunity with these cow-calf producers the more information they have. I have the best way to explain that. I have one producer. She has 70 cows, not very many comparatively for our area, but she will test. She AIs. In fact, she just AI this week her cows. She will genomically test every animal that is comes out, and she will identify those, and she actually will sell those commercial male calves as bulls because she's genomically tested those, and she's developed a rapport with people that she can sell those calves for $3,500 a head, less than a year of age. Now, she had 30 of those. So 30 times 3,500, that's $105,000. That's more money than many people make on their 100 head cow herds. Not only that is she breeds every heifer that she has in every cow, and those animals that don't fit her program because she's identified genomically, she will sell. Those that don't conceive, she fattens up and slaughters, but she can sell those out of a freezer with great confidence because she understands the value that's inside those carcasses. So I would say today that in these instances, there's more value to the small producer than there are the large ones. And I contend, and I'll get on a high horse here when my colleagues say, well, you can't make any money in being a veterinarian for cow-calf producers. That's hogwash. And I'm passionate about that. We need to come alongside these smaller producers, and we can capitalize by using some of these extra tools. That cow herd that I mentioned will actually ultrasound her cattle when they're about 70 to 80 days pregnant. We'll identify those that are bred early. We'll identify those ones that have a male or female fetus inside of them for a value-added service. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's more opportunities today than ever for us as producers. And we work on those smaller producers, and we have producers that have 1,000 cows, and it's all the same. We can do it.
Kind of on the genetic testing, a colleague has asked if you can repeat the name of the lab for the genetic testing.
So the actual lab is Neogen. The company that we send our materials to is called Method Genetics. You can Google them. The people that own that are two individuals who used to work for the American Angus Association, and instead of working for a breed association, they're not confined to that, but they're really, really economically relevant to what we do, our producers do today.
A couple more questions, if you have the time, Dr. Spare.
You bet.
All right. Dr. Tom Scott asked, you mentioned that the Texas A&M study looked at pleural lesions from packing house cattle. Has anyone looked at other parameters such as cardiac lesions, kidney lesions, liver lesions, etc.? He says it seems that the number of cattle may still pass inspection, but will still have some lesions present.
Not that I know of. Knowing that respiratory disease is a major illness in a calf, I was thinking that most of the places that have looked at lesions that indicate some sort of sickness in their life, it's easy to see that consolidated portion of that lung that's healed. And I would imagine that it would be the same if these calves haven't received quality or quantity of colostrum. And I think that in the beef industry, there's way more work to do. And frankly, when I have questions about a particular problem that I can't seem to solve and I can't find the people, I look in the dairy industry because their benchmarking, their controls are way, way better than us in the beef industry.
And that kind of takes us to Dr. Bill Brown's question. I believe Bill Brown is another case stater. if it's the Bill Brown I know. Do you see EPD testing, where do you see it going as a tool for the future of the beef industry?
So I think that it launches us forward. EPDs are used in every breed association. The American Angus Association probably has more numbers than any other breed association that there is, but EPDs are the guiding tools. You saw those different ecosystems. Those areas in Illinois takes a different type of cow, maybe a taller cow, a cow that can produce more milk and still rebreed than a cow in West Texas. That one area was from Van Horn, Texas, which and then another area was from Carlsbad, New Mexico. They won one cow per 100, maybe even a section. One cow per section. Our areas, we won one cow per 20 to 30 acres. So we can identify the nutrient requirements of those cows by the genetic testing also. And there's many people that say, well, you can't have in-carcass merit as well as a maternal cow that can survive in West Texas. And that's not true. That's not a true statement today. And I think that we'll continue to learn how to use the influence of genetic components in health as well as production in years to come. And it's pretty exciting. And I see one of the questions that just came up is what is your opinion on the use of EPDs in animal health? And I keep my ear to the ground on that, looking for different pieces of information. There's some thoughts that there's some late deaths caused by cardiac failure. We haven't been able to identify a specific genetic locus, if you will, of where that is coming from. We know some sire groups that might be, but here again, I often ask my friends in the feed yard that says, well, how come if you kill all those steers that die from cardiac failure, how come the heifers haven't died out here in the pasture? I don't know that for sure, and they don't either. And so I think it's really, we all have to be careful where we identify those health issues tied to a genetic component until we're really sure. Now, I understand in the dog world or the canine world that we're starting to identify some of those. And I think there's great opportunity there to learn. And EPDs will have an influence on that. And I think we'll be able to match cattle to specific environments a little bit better. And I think that we talk about, we've got to feed this world. And beef is a tremendous tool to feed the world today. And because the chickens and the pigs can't eat the grass, even though some of our states want all their chickens out on grass. So I'll quit editorializing there. So the question is, has anyone looked into the correlation of EPDs and minor packing house lesions? I think the animal handling probably has to be a bigger influence there. So certainly great questions.
All right. Well, we've come to the top of our hour, and I just want to take a brief moment and thank Dr. Spare for his presentation. Had a great attendance during this holiday period. So thank you, Dr. Spare. And I will turn it over to Dr. Fletcher, the chair of the Continuing Education Committee.
I'd just like to also say thanks so much, Dr. Spare, for participating and taking your valuable time to support this program with such relevant information. And we really appreciate your time. And I also like to throw it out there to everybody else online. We need volunteers, just like Dr. Spare, to make this program sustainable and continue providing this working program. So please, if you would like to volunteer, let us know. Get a hold of either Dr. Toring, myself, and just let us know what you're thinking, and we would definitely love to hear from you. Or if you know someone else who would like to participate, send us their name or go ahead and ask them to contact us as well. And but with that said, I have nothing else on this end. So have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next year at the next webinar.
Yep.
So thanks again.
Yep. Happy New Year to everybody, and keep an eye out for future invitations.